going to call this meeting to order, the meeting of the Oversight Committee for the date of July 23rd, 2014. May I have a roll call, please?
Board members Apkarian.
Here.
Barry. Nakasone.
Here.
Ochoa. Sheehan. Steger.
Here.
And Chair Raggio.
Here, and we have a quorum. Next item, please.
The agenda for the July 23, 2014 special meeting of the Glendale Oversight Board was posted on Friday, July 18th, 2014 on the bulletin board outside City Hall. And at 2A, we have minutes of the Special Oversight Board meeting of Wednesdays, December 18th, 2013, and the regular Oversight Board meeting of Wednesday, April 2nd, 2014.
May I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion? Call the roll.
Board members Apkarian,
Yes.
Barry, Nakasone,
Yes.
Ochoa, Sheehan, Steger,
Yes.
and Chair Raggio.
Yes. Next item, please.
I believe that, do we want to continue as on?
Chair.
Okay, so we're going to move to the selection of a new chair and vice chair. The business before the Oversight Board is the selection of a chair. The clerk will now entertain nominations for that office.
Any nominations?
I'd like to nominate Carl Raggio as the chair.
Second.
Are there any further nominations? Then hearing none, the roll call. Board members Apkarian,
Yes.
Barry, Nakasone,
Yes.
Ochoa, Raggio,
Yes.
Sheehan, and Steger.
Yes.
I now declare Board Member Raggio the duly appointed chair for the ensuing year.
And I want to thank my comrades in arms here.
And then
I know you made me the chair because it's extra pay and all that.
And then we move forward to the selection of the vice chair. May I have nominations, please?
I nominate Mr. Nakasone as the vice chair.
Second.
Any
Okay,
further
hearing-
nominations? Seeing none?
Board members Apkarian,
Yes.
Barry, Nakasone,
Yes.
Ochoa, Raggio,
Yes.
Sheehan, and Steger.
Yes.
I now declare Board Member Nakasone the duly appointed vice chair of the Oversight Board.
Congratulations, Ron.
Thank you.
All right,
Next
and
item, please.
Next, we're going to go back to informational items. At 3A is Director of Economic Development regarding status of successor agency audits and reporting requirements.
Good afternoon, board members. This is a very brief agenda report just to give an update to the board on the number of audits and reports that we have completed since the dissolution of the redevelopment agency. As you can see from the chart, we have completed 6 ROPSs, and we are working on the 7th ROPS, which we will bring back to you at your September board meeting. And we've gone through a number of cash-related audits where the goal was to identify unobligated cash of the agency and return those cash assets to the various taxing entities. We completed because we completed those cash audits, we received our finding of completion, which opened up the door for us to begin working on our long-range property management plan. And through a couple of back and forth board meetings with some edits required by the state, we were able to get that approved as well. What's remaining is our every 6-month ROPS that we will continue to bring to you. And one of the biggest hurdles that's coming up actually next week is the Dissolution Act requires every agency to go through an audit by the State Controller's Office. And we are being audited by the State Controller starting next Monday, July 28th. They'll be here for a period of 2 weeks conducting their field work And the purpose of this audit is to see if, after the announcement of the dissolution of the redevelopment agency and after the act was passed, if the redevelopment agency inappropriately transferred any assets over to the city or to third parties. So they'll be specifically looking at that, and if we did, then they have the authority to ask that those assets be returned. So we can provide an update at future board meetings once that review is complete. Of the 400 or so agencies statewide, about half of them have had this audit completed.
Oh,
So,
that puts us on the plus side. Good.
so that's all I have in terms of an update. If there are any specific questions on any of the reports or audits, I'd be happy to take them.
Board members have questions? Thank you. Next item.
At 3B is Director of Economic Development regarding status of long-range property management plan and agency projects.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Oversight Board, we wanted to give you an update on our long-range property management plan. As Ms. Babolian had just reported, we had that approved, and so there were 10 properties, if you remember, that you approved for disposition in different ways, and so we'd like to give you a report on those. Won't go forward.
Is it turned on?
Probably the most significant project is the Alex Theater expansion project. It added 6,600 square feet of storage and dressing room space. A majority of it is underground where you can't see it, but it really does open up the theater for different types of productions that can come to the Alex. You'll see in the upper right there is the loading dock, or I'm sorry, that is the new stage entrance. What you don't see is the loading dock. That is on the outside, which is visible, and that will really streamline and make more efficient the unloading and loading of props and different things for the productions. The forecourt project is another project we're working on. It's about 95% complete. It has some landscape work, some lighting that was done. The last thing to do is stain the concrete out in front, and that should be done shortly. Some other projects that we're working on, and these are the final projects from the ground lease that we have with the Alex Theater and Glendale Arts. We'll be doing facade painting in August. The carpet will be replaced. We just yesterday approved a contract for the installation of that carpet. It is being manufactured now to match what's there, so we won't have to do the whole theater, but we'll be able to replace and it'll all match. Some lighting has been purchased. The installation will be done in September by the by Glendale Arts staff, and also the same with rigging. We replace that about every 10 years. The next project is the Museum of Neon Art, most visible down on South Brand across from the Americana at Brand. We have finished our shell work. That is the landlord's work on the outside. We've turned it over to the Museum of Neon Art to do their tenant improvements. That is the building there. A nice benchmark for us was to add the diver on the top, and so it really becomes an iconic building. We're working on the Paseo. I'll show that to you later on in the presentation, but this should be ready to go in November with that Paseo. We had some projects where we were enforcing or we were fulfilling an enforceable obligation. That is, we needed to transfer the land as part of that agreement. The Comar Marriott is there on the top. We are now discussing a different flag, but basically the same design, and you will see the same number of rooms. That should start construction early next year. They'll start working on their drawings, get them into plan check.
So Marriott would not be the flag?
I don't think Marriott will be the flag at this point, but Marriott is still very interested, and so in a worst case, we would have Marriott come back. 111 East Wilson is what we refer to as the Lemley Lofts project. We're a Lemley Theater, 5-screen Lemley Theater on the ground floor. The Panda Inn restaurant that is currently on the site will move back into the new project, and then there's 42 units above. That will start construction early next year as well. 820 North Central is a parking lot that we own.
When you say 42 units, what size are we talking about? Studio?
No, they're large studios. If they were, they're somewhere between 800 and 1,200 square feet. There's different studios, one bedrooms and two bedrooms. 820 North Central is a lot that is adjacent to the Conrad's restaurant. It was a property that the agency owned. When we found we didn't need it for the hotel, we struck an agreement with Conrad's to sell that back to them. And so we have a purchase price, and we're just having the long-range property management plan approved was an important step. We can now move forward with the exchange of that property, or I should say the sale of that property. Those proceeds will get distributed among all the taxing entities.
Now, is the property being only offered to Conrad's, or is it just an open market?
It's only to Conrad's. It was an agreement that we had with Conrad's. So this is fulfilling that enforceable obligation.
The fair market value, whatever that might be.
It was an appraised value according to a formula that was struck prior to the dissolution of redevelopment. And it is fair market value, I should say, but with a date of value. Government use properties, these are properties that are government use and are transferred back to the city. The Americana open space was approved to be transferred, and that has been done. The Paseo, just adjacent to the Museum of Neon Art, is currently under construction. That is being constructed with the parking behind what we used to call the Lot 10 alley. And this will be improved with new landscape lighting. We'll reorganize the parking and so that it works for both the businesses on Brand Boulevard as well as the library and adult recreation center. The Paseo will be the connector between the private or commercial use at the Americana on the west side of the street and that civic use of the Central Library, the Adult Recreation Center, and Central Park. We anticipate this to be complete in November. And then finally, we have 3 properties for sale that we need to sell. We don't have agreements with a particular developer or owner that we would sell them to. 300 East Broadway is a 25-space parking lot on the corner of Louise and Broadway. And then the Maryland Exchange, my apologies, we've covered the text with the picture, but the Maryland Exchange is those storefronts that are incorporated into the garage, the Exchange garage on Maryland. That was always intended to be privately owned. It's a separate parcel and can be sold as such. So those 2 properties we will probably sell through auction. And this is a program that the Department of Finance has approved. So we'll put it out to bid and we'll have a period of time when people can make their bids on those properties, those 2. The Americana parking structure fee parcel, this is the fee interest underneath the parking garage. It does not include the parking garage improvements or those commercial improvements that are there, just the fee underneath the garage. That will be directed to Crusoe affiliated. They are the only person that would have the interest in the property. I shouldn't say they're the only person to have interest. They're the most likely person to have interest, and they're probably the best person long-term. But that property will be appraised and sold to them at fair market value, given all of the restrictions, leases, covenants, and conditions that are placed on that property. So that concludes our 10 properties that you approved and their disposition, and certainly staff is here to answer any questions.
The Americana parking structure parcel, the revenue from the parking and all that, does that still come to the city, or does that go to Americana?
The revenue from the parking went to pay the operating costs first, and then there was a split of the revenue that was left. between the redevelopment agency, and now Successor Agency, and Caruso affiliated. So today, that money that comes to the Successor Agency is used to offset any enforceable obligations we have. So we collect less RTTPF for that. Going forward, when Caruso affiliated buys that, that is really the only income stream, and that's where the value of the property is. And so that really sets the value for which it would be purchased, and then that's something between the same party, and they would keep all of the revenue. But we
So
would have the sales proceeds.
Whoever buys the fee simple in that property will get the, not that the city is getting that, or the successor agency is getting that revenue. That revenue would go to whoever purchases the fee simple of that property.
That's correct. And then the purchase price, which represents that value of that ongoing revenue stream, comes to the successor agency, well, I should say, comes through to all of the taxing entities. So we're in effect exchanging our receipt of that property, of that parking revenue for a sale proceeds. And that's the way that the appraisal has been set up.
Again, who approves the sale? Let's say if Caruso says, I want it, this is the price. Does the successor agency just decide, okay, we're gonna just sell to them, or does it come back to us for approval?
The successor agency can direct the sale. There will be a purchase and sale agreement that must come back to this entity, along with all of the supporting documentation. You need to approve it, and then it goes to the Department of Finance. The Department of Finance will have to approve it.
Okay, so before the sale, we have to approve it, it goes to the Department of Finance, and then it gets approved after?
Correct.
Okay.
And we anticipate having all this out of the way by the end of this calendar year?
I would imagine we would have everything out by the end of the calendar, at least the sale of those 3 properties out before the end of the calendar year. Those 3 sales, I should say, if we do them by auction, that process has been approved by the Department of Finance. I don't believe that there will be a purchase and sale agreement that needs to come back to you. So those would just go, and what happens in this arrangement is the Department of Finance oversees it real time as the bids are coming in, and then they approve it and you go forward. With the underlying fee of the parking garage, that would be a purchase and sale agreement that would come back to you.
Okay.
The other properties are all dictated by some other mechanism, and they would go forward according to that mechanism, which you have already approved.
And just a final question, if you don't mind. The Museum of Neon Arts, the structure, the property, everything else is owned by the successor agency? And it's leased to the Neon? Whatever they call it?
It is owned by the successor agency. It is leased to the Museum of Neon Art. It has been designated for future development, transferred to the city. So
Transferred to the city of Glendale?
City of Glendale.
I got it, okay.
Further questions? Thank you, Bill. Next item, please.
So we move on to 4B, Director of Economic Development regarding discussion of board meeting schedule. At 4B1 is resolution authorizing modification of the Oversight Board meeting schedule in the Rules of Conduct.
This is a agenda report. We did cancel 2 meetings in the month of May and June. There were no action items for the board to consider, and although the bylaws call for the selection of vice chair and chair in the month of May, we held that over until we had some action items for the board to consider. And so we are agendizing this this topic for the board to discuss, and your options are to continue to have monthly board meetings as there are agenda items to consider. You may choose to cancel the monthly board meetings and only hold special board meetings as necessary, or whatever direction the board would like to give staff.
If I
Mr.
might.
Chair, if I could just add, we have some strikeout underlined language that has been included in Article 5 of the bylaws, which set forth the regular meeting schedule, which was to be the first Wednesday of every month at 2:30. That was a regular meeting schedule. The recommended or optional language that the board could adopt is modifying that to suspend the regular meeting schedule and just hold special meetings as needed to conduct the Oversight Board's business on that first Wednesday of every month or as needed, unless otherwise directed by the board or as required by statute.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just add, we did have these meetings scheduled for every month. And then as the redevelopment agency winds down, there's less and less that comes before the Oversight Board. In fact, in 2016, it is designed that there's one Oversight Board for the entire county, because we figure that things will wind down. There was some concern expressed that we didn't have any business and we were canceling meetings. And then there was some things that were happening that didn't require your oversight or your vote, but there were things that were going on. What staff would suggest is that we could, if you so choose, we could meet on an as-needed basis, but monthly we could send you a report of anything we're doing behind the scenes, so to speak. And that way you can stay abreast of all of the information. Certainly any one of you can contact us with questions from that report. We would caution against any serial emails, but certainly ask questions of the staff. This would keep you informed, and then we would only meet whenever it's required. I think the statement that was made was there's no need to meet if there's no need to meet. So we want to give that option to you. So again, if you want to meet every month, we'll do that on an as-needed basis. We can check your calendars and get a date. And if we were to do that, we would supply you with monthly reports on any activity that we're engaged in.
What's the consideration, Albert?
I mean, we have a chair, and my understanding would be that we would keep the schedule as is, and as you have done in the past, if you see that there are no items on the agenda, then the chair basically cancels the meeting for that month, and then we move to the next month, and if there's nothing else, then we just move to the next month. I think that works better, because if one of the parties or one of the members of this board is concerned about anything, then there should be a meeting. Transparency is everything. So I think that we're just keeping it the way it is, and if the chair decides there's nothing to discuss, then we just cancel.
Well, are you suggesting also in lieu of that when we don't have need for a meeting, that
Then we get a report.
You get a report anyhow, and that means that you're current on a monthly basis with respect to what's going on. But as Phil has stated, as time goes on, and as you know, our deadline happens to be, we're through by 2/16. And as time goes on, there is less and less for us to get involved in, because there is a wind down, not a wind up, but a wind down of the activities of the Successor Agency. And they have less to do, which means we have less to get involved in with them. But your suggestion is that we maintain the schedule, but we only have meetings as needed.
Yeah, and the chair basically makes a decision as to if there's really nothing else for us to do that month, and the chair would say, no need for a meeting this month, please provide us with a report, and then you just provide us with a report. This way, then there's a little bit of a checks and balances, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yes, and I would agree, I think, which is what we've been doing now. I like having it on my calendar just so I can sort of schedule around it, but I certainly would appreciate reports when they're appropriate.
Ron?
Yeah, I'm okay with the current system. I don't have a problem with it. I mean, it seems like, though, the only times we really have to meet are definitely for the ROPS, and we know that those are 2 dates that...
But I think the memo concerning activities during that time is something that we need to be kept abreast of, and that says that we know what's going on as much as anybody does.
I was just going to add, Mr. Nakasone kind of hit it right on the head. Going forward, we see probably 2 meetings a year for the ROPS, because quite frankly, we have done what we're supposed to do. This board has done what it's supposed to do and unwind the redevelopment agency. We're almost done. And so the only actions that I can foresee are twice a year, that ROPS.
And sale of the approval
And
of sale
sale
of
the
property.
properties. I think it's a good idea to leave it on the calendar, and the only thing that I would note is, for, again, this ROPS period, this coming ROPS period, we were notified that there's a new template, and it will be available when the state makes it available to us. So once that is available, we then scramble. For instance, it is being made available, I think, August 1st. We have a meeting scheduled on August 6th. We will not have the ROPS prepared for you by that time. So we may need to cancel the meeting or push it, or just wait until
Well,
September.
we're presently scheduled for the middle of September.
Correct.
Right, and that's why you received that, because there are some other things that, outside influences that we cannot control with ROPS, so it may not fall, exactly on that first Wednesday.
And Phil, all at that point, what would happen, which has happened now, is that the chair basically will say, we need no meeting at that time, and then we just move it to the next month. It'll just be
Or-
one person just kind of making that decision, I think.
Yes, or we'll ask you for a separate date, a special date,
Right.
depending on when we need to hit a deadline for the Department of Finance. That was a note, and then also, I think you'll confirm that we will not have an August meeting, because we won't be ready, simply won't be ready for you.
And I'm sorry.
I take it the member of the board agree in that, the four of us agree that it's as needed, the meeting call, and there will be a monthly memo indicating the activities during the prior month.
And if any board member has additional questions and they believe we should have a meeting, they should contact the staff, and staff will contact the chair and see if we need one.
Agreeable?
Agreed.
Even the monthly, report, I mean, we've been pretty good about getting correspondence as you received it, so, I mean, there may not be anything even on the monthly report to report at that point, because you've been pretty good about sending us things as you receive them, so.
Does this need to be put in the motion frame, or? No. Okay.
No, because we're not changing anything.
You're not changing your bylaws, and you're just giving.
Okay, we're all agreeable on where we're going from this. Thank you. Next item.
At 4C is Director of Economic Development regarding an assignment and assumption agreement related to the agreement, excuse me, for allocation of tax increment funds for the San Fernando Road Corridor Redevelopment Project. At 4C1 is resolution approving assignment and assumption agreement, subject to the approval of the County Board of Supervisors.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Oversight Board, Mr. Raggio may recall back in 1992, we entered into what's called a pass-through agreement with the County of Los Angeles, with the school district, and other taxing entities to pass through tax increment to those entities. In the year 2000, we amended that agreement with the county so that the county would pass back to the city of Glendale 60% of their pass-through, and that money that was coming back to the city of Glendale would be used for regional public improvements. There was a list of improvements that we agreed on with the county. The agreement was structured because we had no idea there was going to be the dissolution of redevelopment. The agreement was structured that the dollars would come back to the redevelopment agency, and the redevelopment agency and the city of Glendale would be responsible for building these improvements. What happened is that money came back to the agency, and in dissolution, it got caught up in there's no better way to say it, a weird place. The Department of Finance didn't know how to handle it. The county didn't know how to handle it. We weren't sure how to handle it. So what we were doing is we would put the receipt of those dollars on a ROPS, and when we had to spend those dollars, we would put it on a ROPS. All three groups agreed that this was very cumbersome, and it allowed for question every 6 months of these funds coming back. The Department of Finance actually suggested to us take it out of the ROPS process and assign, so have the agency assign their interest in that agreement to the city, which was already a party to the agreement. Just have them assign that to the city. So now going forward, we will pass through to the county through the ROPS process, and they will get their dollars. They will pass back to the city their general fund money, and those general funds that they're passing back will be restricted for those improvements that we agreed upon. The city will receive the dollars, the city will construct the improvements, the city will continue to report to the county all of the things that we need to according to the original agreement. So in short, we're just taking the agency out so that it's not part of the ROPS process, and those dollars can flow back to the city and then be put into regional public improvements that benefit the entire county. We didn't put one together, but I know my counterpart at the county understands it. I know the manager at the Department of Finance understands it, and we all concluded that this was a unique situation that just didn't fit nicely into the Dissolution Act. And so this was the fix that was suggested by the Department of Finance. This, the Successor Agency approved this yesterday. If you approve it today, the county will have it on their agenda shortly, and then it will go up to the Department of Finance. We anticipate that everybody will approve it because we've already negotiated this up front.
Move to approve.
The one thing we didn't anticipate in 1992 was that there would be no redevelopment agency.
Indeed.
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
A second.
Any more discussion? Roll call, please.
Board members Abkarian,
Yes.
Barry, Nakasone,
Yes.
Ochoa, Sheehan, Steger,
Yes.
and Chair Raggio.
Yes. Resolution has been approved. Next item?
Oral communications, and there are no cards or members of the public present.
Is there a need for a closed session? Board members have any comments?
Staff has one, just to add to what Mr. Lanzafame was saying, there will be no need to have the August meeting, and the September 3rd meeting, staff has been in touch with your offices and has secured September 17th
Yeah.
as the backup date. So September 3rd is being switched to September 17th as a special meeting. And that would be to consider the ROPS.
Very good. Any further comment? If not,
I just have one.
oh, pardon me.
I just want to let you know, this is my last Oversight Board meeting.
Oh.
I've accepted a position as Deputy City Clerk with the City of Costa Mesa
Oh,
in August. So,
well, congratulations.
Congratulations.
everybody.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
We'll miss you.
Yes.
When does this begin?
I start August 25th.
Wow.
So
Well,
it's a
best of
new
luck to
exciting
you.
adventure by the beach.
Yeah, much closer.
That'll be nice.
And a motion to adjourn, please.
Motion.
We're adjourned.